too. So that's
Yeah, it started it, and then because I have that Fathom set up because it takes notes for everything, but I just disabled it.
oh, okay. All right, cool. Yeah, you can totally use that if you like. I will send out the recordings and I also post them on system.io. So I'll actually have a folder there that will keep them all in. I have a couple from past times,
Mhm.
but I figured I'm just going to start fresh and we're just going to go from this point onward. The other ones are a little bit glitchy, so this should be good going forward. So thank you for coming. I'll probably have some stragglers come in. I did invite everybody, so just depending on their time situation, sometimes it makes it, sometimes they don't.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how long they usually last and if I'll be able to stay the whole time, but I at least wanted to pop in and kind of see you face to face.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they last about an hour, sometimes 45 minutes to an hour, just depending on if anybody has any questions. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So at the beginning of class, we just take some deep breaths together. So I'll just guide us through some nice deep breath work. And this is something that you can also instill in your somatic nurse coach techniques with starting with people at the beginning of your sessions. So I highly advise it just because it lets our nervous system just kind of come back to the present moment. Because sometimes we'll bring in stuff from previous clients or throughout our day. So we just kind of come back to ourselves. So if you want, just go ahead and sit in your chair. Just feel your seat on your seat. And if it feels good, you can close your eyes, soften your gaze, or take your gaze down, looking towards the ground or your computer desk or wherever you're sitting at right now. I just want you to take just an inventory here. Just take a moment to become aware of your internal dialogue, of your internal frequency, whether that's maybe it's kind of a fast-paced frequency right now, maybe it's a calming frequency. Just kind of notice the energetics of your body. And now take a moment to become aware of your breathing. Notice your breath, if it's shallow or deep, maybe fast or slow. Maybe it changes a little bit since we've brought attention to that. We're going to go ahead and take a nice deep inhale on a 4 count. So breathing in through the nose, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, open mouth, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Let's take another nice deep inhale on a 4 count. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale out of the mouth. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do that one more time. Inhale deeply in through the nose on your own here. Hold at the top. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just take notice of how you feel of just those 3 breaths. All right, bring a smile to your face because we are getting to meet here today and it's going to be amazing. All right, and when you're ready, open up your eyes. All right. So even just those 3 breaths can make such a huge difference. And, going throughout the day, I highly advise everybody to just check in with your breath. Because most of the time we're breathing very shallow. That's just how we breathe. We're not like little cute babies anymore. Babies take huge belly breaths. And we see that when we watch children, they actually breathe in through their chests and their bellies. And as adults, we kind of start to hunch our backs and kind of keel over and we're like, so it's really important to really take those deep breaths throughout the day. All right. So before we get started, Jenny, is there anything in the material that you wanted to touch on before we dive into some limiting beliefs and emotional frequencies today?
I don't think so. Nothing specific right now. I am in module 1 and just digging into it and really enjoying it so far. So very cool.
All
Thank
right,
you.
yeah, great. Yeah, there's things that we'll add during these mastermind sessions, especially module 1 is just kind of just a brief overview of the nervous system and neuroscience in general, but there's so much more to get deeper into that. And I'm even thinking about extending this course just because it's so much information and there's even more information that I want to put into it. So anybody that signs up for this course up to this point and beyond, you'll have access to come back in and check into the modules for more added information. And as I add, I'll email you guys letting you know, like, hey, I added this to module 1. You may want to review it so you can use it with your client. So good. I'm
Perfect.
so glad that you're getting through that okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, there's so much information. And like I said, let's kind of talk about the subconscious and conscious, kind of reviewing that module 1 here. So when we talk about subconscious, our subconscious is running in the background all the time, even when we're sleeping. It's constantly running. And so what's great about the subconscious is we can reprogram it. It's like a computer. And our brain is actually a computer, as we know from neuroplasticity and neural pathways. At any time, we can change our thought patterns. So a lot of our clients that we'll be seeing, especially around the mental health realm, and really every patient is a mental health patient. I have so many students, they're like, I don't want to do mental health. And I'm like, well, then you should just leave nursing because
Right. Absolutely.
literally, right? Like literally every patient, if we think about it, a patient that's diagnosed with cancer, some type of cancer, has now maybe anxiety about the cancer, about the procedures, and about things that are going to happen. They might even have dread. They might even have worry and fear of what's going to happen, right? So there's so many different emotions that are varied into each possible diagnosis that somebody might come across within the physical world, as we'd like to say. And mental health, I like to view it more as a spiritual situation rather than like there's something wrong with your brain. There's probably something spiritually um, maybe disconnected that we really need to dive into. And that's kind of where the subconscious comes in, because we live in this 2D, 3D world, but really we are beyond our own bodies, right? We are spiritual beings just kind of walking around in this human body, but there's so much more to us.
Mhm.
And with somatic nurse coaching, we want to dive more into that spiritual realm of each person having this beyond the physical body, and kind of helping people understand, like, you know, you might be in a psychosis because there's something in your environment. You might not be fulfilling like your life's purpose. And now you're getting combated with the spiritual realm, with your physical realm, and it's causing this shakeup, which I call psychosis. And we often see this, especially with people that experience bipolar or even schizophrenia. These moments of psychosis sometimes happen around big experiences. So, students that are starting college, psychosis, people that are about to get married, psychosis,
Mhm.
moms that just have babies. We see a lot of psychosis actually with that. That's a big life change. And sometimes if they're not ready to accept being a mom, that psychosis kind of is brought on from that like resistance to your life path. So with somatic nurse coaching, we're really trying to help people understand, like, hey, you might be experiencing a psychotic moment, or those psychotic moments that you've had in your life are actually like a collision of spiritual and physical, right? It's like, wait, hold on, put the brakes on. We got to figure out life right now. Instead that there's something wrong with you, because usually there's not something wrong with somebody. It's a spiritual disconnection. And we often see this many of the times with the complexities of mental health disorders that have psychosis involved in them. And so I just watched this really good documentary. It was the mind of serial killers. And it was talking about, are they crazy or insane? And really, it came down to a lot of these people that had committed horrendous murders or even serial killing were traumatized as children.
Mhm.
And so, we look at the ACE score within mental health. We look at the ACE score so much, the adverse childhood event score, But literally, we really don't talk about that so much. And when we're interviewing patients, we don't talk about like, hey, what were some of your traumas from early childhood? Like, did your parents get divorced? Were you burned as a child? What happened? Were you in a car accident? Did you move around a bunch, right? Did you have a step parent that possibly sexually molested you, right? So there's so many things that happen in our childhood that kind of come to the surface as adults that we don't really dive into in traditional nursing.
Mhm.
So as a somatic nurse coach, we really try to get somewhat of a background. I mean, sometimes we don't even need to ask patients or clients or whatever you want to call them within your own practice, what is your diagnosis? Because really we're trying to get to the point where we're understanding, you know, to be in the present and to move forward. Yes, those things happen to you, but we don't need to focus on them because traditional counseling and therapy, we focus on the past a lot and we talk about it over and over. And if I've been in that situation where I've had to get a new therapist and tell them my story over and over, and then get a new therapist, and then you're
Yeah.
telling them that, and it's like you're just repeating that trauma over
Mhm.
and over. Does that make sense, Jenny?
Mhm.
Like,
Yes. Yeah.
so it's with somatic nurse coaching, the reason why I wanted this program for nurses is because there's a huge piece missing out of nursing that nurses can totally do. We can do these things. And with the amount of people needing mental health help, um, and that we don't have enough therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists, it's like, well, we don't need that approach anymore. That's not helping, obviously. Like, look at the depression rates, look at the
Right.
suicide rates. It's like that stuff's not helping. So why do we keep hiring more therapists and psychotherapists? And, it's a little daunting of where that movement is still going. And, with the amount of grants even that have been exposed lately from this current president with the mental health, which is great, but it's like, we don't need more therapists. We need nurses to help out because nurses probably have a little bit more mental health and therapeutic communication, which is so big in in having dialogue with people. A lot of times therapists aren't trained in therapeutic communication. They're trained on, here's a form, go ahead and fill out this form, follow the form, and let's see where that goes. But even school nurses should be somatically trained to crisis response, right? So if a kiddo's having overwhelm, or also known as suicidal ideations, if they're having thoughts of suicide because they're so overwhelmed, a school nurse should be able to step in and be like, hey, what's going on in your life? Instead of whipping out a form and being like, okay, are you having thoughts of suicide? Are you feeling like killing yourself? Like, a kid's going to be like, what the heck? Right. So the approach is so 1950s, as I like to call it. It hasn't changed. The approach hasn't changed. So somatic nurse coaches are changing. We are revolutionizing care across the board, whether it's mental health or physical health, because we have that background. We have a lot of background in caring for patients. We're just not giving the opportunity to be able to care for patients because we're identified by time constraints by insurance companies
Mhm.
and by doctors' offices and by hospitals. And so when you get the notion of what you want your practice to look like and what kind of clientele you want to see and what you want to hone in on, we don't have to worry about insurance companies anymore. Yes, we can provide super bills to clients and they can send that through their insurance company. And sometimes they do get reimbursed as like a wellness nurse visit. I've had that happen. But we are no longer getting paid 34, 40, $50 an hour. Like, we start at 120 and we go up. So start thinking big numbers within that context of, you will be getting paid for your time and your energy. And to really focus on, where are we putting our energy as well? Because if we're working for somebody all day and we get paid $34 an hour, and then by the time we get home, we're like, oh, like, I feel horrible. I just want to go to bed, right? It's like, we need to start looking more at our limiting beliefs of why we're in our current situation. And so we're going to dive into that here. So in regard to the subconscious, our beliefs of our thoughts and the things that we're hearing throughout the day and throughout our sleep can really help mold what kind of limiting beliefs we want to get rid of. And so I'll go ahead and bring up this sheet here. And so I've created a wheel of limiting beliefs, and I'm going to go ahead and put it as well in the chat. So let me bring up the chat first. You have that. Too many screens open here. Too many screens. Okay. Limiting beliefs. Here we go. All right. I don't think it went into the chat though.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
There. It's weird. Okay. All right. I'll figure it out here in a minute. Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and bring it up here so you can see that at least.
Alrighty.
All right. Can you see that okay, Jenny?
Yes, thank you.
All right, perfect. So when we talk about limiting beliefs, and it's important for us as somatic nurse coaches to do our own work before we can help others. And that's what I currently see in nursing is we do a lot of trauma stacking. And what that means is everything that has happened in our previous life that we haven't dealt with, and not saying that we're never going to deal with stuff and that when we do deal with stuff, we're completely healed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that triggering things that have bothered us in our past, now that all of a sudden we have a patient, say we have a nurse that was sexually abused when they were 8, and now she has a patient in front of her that is 8-year-old, sexually abused by her stepfather. And she was also 8 years old, sexually abused by her stepfather. Now, what happens with that is all of a sudden we now have trauma stacking, and we have stacked what has previously happened to us by the current situation of the person that is in front of us. And it's not even our situation, but we're taking our past situation and we're bringing it into the present moment. And now we have stacked trauma upon trauma. And some reactions might be going within and just kind of coming back to our own experience and actually bringing that experience into the present moment while we're interviewing that patient. And tears might come up. You might feel fearful all of a sudden. You're like, whoa, why am I feeling all of these emotions? It's because that little thing that had happened that's kind of stuffed within you is now coming to the forefront. And it's like, holy shit, I got to deal with this. And those things are going to keep coming up, and our nurses are just not prepared for the situations that they get presented with. I actually had a student the other day that was really just taken back. He was a veteran himself, and he had served a tour in Iraq, and he had a veteran in front of him that had also served a tour in Iraq, but was deeply dealing with PTS. And I don't use the word PTSD because it's not a disorder. It's an experience that happened to you. So it's not so much of a disorder. It's a traumatic event that has happened to you that has led up to this point that is affecting you, which it can be healed. It can be undiagnosed. So it's not so much of a disorder. It's a emotional event that has just stuck with you, and it's on repeat. It's on a wash cycle, and it just keeps going. And it's not till we hit that stop button and we're like, whoa, wait a minute, you're still not in Iraq. You're in the present moment. But this student was having such a hard time because they were really bringing their experience from their time in Iraq up to that present moment in trying to help this veteran, and they couldn't. They almost got like blocked. And he said, my face, I felt really dizzy, and I had to excuse myself, and I couldn't help that patient in that moment because I was taken back to my own experience. And so in that moment, he realized, like, I really haven't dealt with this situation. And it really affected me in that moment with that person. So when we look at limiting beliefs, we're looking at things that have been said to us in our past, or people have said to us in our past, that are still kind of on repeat. And they might come up like, you're ugly, or you're fat, or you're not good enough. You have a champagne taste on a beer budget. You will never be a doctorate level nurse, or you will never go far in nursing, or you will never be a manager, right? These are things that people, our coworkers might have said to us, our family might have said to us, some random person on Facebook or Instagram might have commented on, but those things stick with us, right? It's like the example of taking a wooden board and just banging a bunch of nails in that. And those are those kind of low frequency statements, right? Those limiting beliefs. And once we remove those nails, those holes are still there. And it's not until we take some wood filler, right, and we put that into those holes and we fill it up, but we can still see where those holes are. So it's not like we totally get rid of limiting beliefs. We actually just create new neural circuitry in our subconscious to kind of reroute those limiting beliefs. So our subconscious all the time is listening to us. And the more that we talk to it and say, like, I'm ugly, then you're probably going to be ugly. And you're probably going to present to the world as somebody who is ugly, not in a sense of maybe looks, but just even how you're acting, right? It was interesting. I had a client the other day and she just kept saying, I'm broke. I'm so broke. And I was like, really? Really? Because you're talking to me right now and I know you just paid. So are you broke? And she's like, well, no, like, I guess I'm not broke. And I was like, hold on, well, let's reframe that. Like, were you able to pay your gas bill this month? Were you able to pay your water bill? Were you able to pay your house mortgage or your rent, your car note? She was like, oh, yeah, I was able to pay all those things. Okay, well, then let's reframe. You're not broke. You just think you are because you've been conditioned to think that. And we went more into her family's history. And she's like, yeah, my parents didn't really have much money growing up. They had a very limited mindset. You know, they would say things like, we can't afford that. Why would you ask for such a thing? That's $100, right? So she got this bombardment of like, you're not good enough financially, and she brought it into adulthood. So that would be an example of a limiting belief within finance. Now, this is really helpful for us to do as humans before we start helping others, because we really need to start subconsciously reprogram our own mindset to help us get new clients, right? If we're saying all the time, like, nobody wants to buy my program, nobody wants to take this course, I'm a horrible coach, like whatever it might be, yeah, people are not going to show up because you're putting that energy out there, right? We are beyond our physical body. So if we're constantly saying these things to ourselves, the universe, source, God, they're listening and they're going to make it happen that you don't get any clients because you believe that you don't deserve that, right? So it's all about belief and believing the things that we cannot see. And people that are very religious believe that there's God, believe that there's Jesus, right? They believe in something that they cannot see. And so it's very similar in the spiritual capacity that we believe in something that we also cannot see. We cannot see that there's 20 clients coming into us this month, but we can believe it. We can believe like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that I have 20 clients coming in this month from all sorts of places, right? So if we start to speak those kind of things, they will happen. And I want you to kind of think in your own life, when are some times that I've kind of put that out there of what I wanted and it happened, right? Like we're feeding the universe, we're feeding our spirit guides, our ancestors, whoever's listening, we're feeding them what we want. And usually they will give it to us. So has that happened to you in your life, Jenny? Have you noticed anything like that happen in your lifetime when you've asked for something and you've got it?
Absolutely. The house that I'm in, we've been here for almost a year now, but I found out about this house. I mean, we were just like just starting to, I mean, we were kind of like not even really looking, it was just like, well, what if, because we lived in the same house for many years, raised our kids there. When my husband had been there since 88, I was there since 97. And we looked for some different things, but everything was like whatever we wanted was like much more than we wanted to spend. And the
Yeah.
things that we did want to spend, it was like, oh, but where would we actually stay? Because we'd have to like knock that house down. Um, but I went to my massage therapist and she flipped some houses and stuff, but not, I mean, they're more like in town, smaller, more rental kind of houses. And so I said, look, we're kind of looking, let me know if you come across something that, that's like has a little bit of land and is kind of out in the country, but not too far. I want to be able to get into town, not be snowed in. And and it'd be nice if it's, so I just like went through all these things. And then I was like, oh yeah. And also, if it had like a pond or a creek, that'd be a bonus. And we don't have a very big budget. And she was like, well, I do know a place like that. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah. She said, it's my aunt's house. They, her and my uncle lived there for years. And then he passed away last year and it's too much for her. And so long story short, I started praying for this house like that day. And I knew like we came and we looked and it's kind of like set back a little bit. So we didn't, it was like we kind of saw it and it was like, hey, there's that house. And so I started praying for this house in August of, I don't know, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then in November, finally found out that yes, it was, she'd done some things, it was up for sale. And we came and saw it and put in an offer the next day and everything just went boom, boom, boom. And so here we are with our house with a pond with
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's manifesting in prayer at its finest. Absolutely. And yeah, we get what we ask for, right? So yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. That's so
You're
great.
welcome.
And and you can use that example with your own clients and to let them know, I think, especially in relation to health, because we're seeing a lot of people for their health, their physical health, their mental health, their spiritual health, and saying, are you always saying, I hope I don't get sick. I
Yeah.
hope I don't get sick. And I saw this with my clients during the cough, or AKA COVID.
Uh-huh.
And people are like walking around like, spraying stuff down, wearing masks, wearing gloves. I hope I don't get sick. And what happened? They got sick. And it's
Mhm.
like, you brought that upon yourself. You asked for it,
Right.
it's like, um, and so that client that I was talking to that was stating that she was so broke, it literally stopped her in her tracks when I presented this access to limiting beliefs, because if she wrote down like 5 in finance. And I was like, wow, I'm like, those are just compiled upon each other. And now that you have these limiting beliefs, we're just going to erase them and we're going to cross them out. And she started a whole new page and we're like, okay, what can you say instead? So some of the things that she came up with, she said, I am filled with abundance. I am able to pay all my bills and not worry about it. I have money coming in from multiple income streams. Like, the list was I was like, you have like 10 things compared to your 4 that you've brought into your lifetime. And so saying those things over and over, and that's where our subconscious comes in, that we can reprogram. And Dr. Joe Dispenza has some really cool studies on neural reprogramming with the subconscious. And he basically states, like, you can reprogram any basically database that you've collected over the years, like you're not good enough, you're broke, you'll never be loved, right? You can reprogram those to bring in what you want. And just like you said, you brought in that house. And what were some limiting beliefs, maybe, Jenny, that you had around house buying first? Like, when you were going into that process, what were maybe some limiting beliefs that came up for you that you noticed?
Um, well, part of it was, is this like we can't really afford this. I mean, and
Mhm.
my husband and I are very, very different. I mean, it's worked. We've been together for 27 years now, but it's like I'm much more positive. And part of that is because he's so negative that I try to kind of overcompensate for that. But he's like, we can't do that unless we sell the other houses. And so we're not wealthy people. We have two small houses. My mom lived next door to us at our old house. And when she died, we got her house, which needs a lot of work and all of that. And we have a son that's living there. And then our other kids stayed in our other house. And it's like, they're paying for them. Why do we have to sell the houses to, so it was kind of combating some of those things, but being afraid that, there wasn't going to be enough money. It was a bad time to do it because interest rates were high. So, those were definitely some things that we dealt with. And, and being afraid that it was, kind of taking on too much because there was a lot of work that needed done. So we bought the house, but then we also had a lot of the work done because we're not really DIY kind of people. And it was like, let's get it done, because my husband at that time was working full time. He's retired since then. And so just, trying to get all of that figured out, and and not be negative about all of it. But overall for me, like, I definitely have some limiting beliefs in a lot of areas, but the house for me was just kind of, it was just a done deal for the most part. Right from the beginning, there was little moments of, oh, what did we do?
Right. Yeah.
But other than that, it's probably one of the things I felt the best about, overall, as far as making a good decision and a right decision for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think it sounds like you were kind of stepping into some emotions of the unknown, right? Like, can we do this? Can we, right? And those are just like the unknown things that, when we are taking risks and when we are changing our life and usually going in the right direction, we do get like hesitant. We're like, oh, wait, hold on. This is the unknown. It's not comfortable. And then that's when we transform. So, yeah, like you were saying, you just knew it. And that's just basically tapping into that intuition, which so much of the time is taken away from nurses.
Right.
It's when we're on the floor or even in a doctor's office, it's like go, 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 go. And we don't really have time to tap into that intuitive essence. And I remember actually getting in trouble for being intuitive in a sense that, I was a traveler in a few mental health facilities. And so, I'm the outcast anyway, because I'm a traveler and, they're like, well, you're not, you're getting paid way more than us. And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe you should get on the traveling assignment.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Right?
traveled too.
It's like, why are you doing that? And so I found out where the warm blankets were. And that's like and on any unit, even when I had clinical students, I was like, where are your warm blankets? Because they are like literally gold. I love warm blankets, and I got in trouble for handing them out. And I and I was using my intuition. I had several patients. One was having a panic attack, and I had them through doing some deep breathing, and they were kind of getting into it, but they were still really having a hard time. And I was like, okay, hold on. I had a nursing student with me, and I was like, go get a warm blanket. And she brought this warm blanket, and I'm like, would you mind if we put this around you and kind of cocooned you? And she was like, sure, sure, yeah. And she was still, really kind of freaking out a little bit. And as soon as the nursing student put that around her, she took a deep breath, she was like, and
Yeah.
like her whole demeanor changed, and she stopped focusing on whatever was freaking her out. And she just sat there and she just started rocking. And I was like, yes, it's working. And, so it's those moments that somatics really come into play in patients' care. And, some of our somatic nurse coaches, they are still in practice. I have maternity somatic nurse coaches, and they're still practicing in hospitals, but they bring this stuff in and they're like, Emily, it's crazy. Like, people come back to themselves. And I'm like, yes, like that's the beauty of somatics, is we come back to the present moment and we stop worrying about the future and the past. We're just like here now. Um, So I remember the nursing supervisor took me aside. I was working like a night shift as a traveler. And she was like, "Hey, I heard that you used like 5 warm blankets last night, and like we're really not supposed to use those." And I was like, "Then why do we even have them?" And she's like, "Well, when people come around for tours, we let them know that we do offer warm blankets like for sleeping, but we don't really do that." I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "Yes, and this is just another thing that's shitty about nursing." It's
Yeah.
like we put this facade on of how great things are. It's like
Right.
and it reminded me kind of interesting, like childcare centers, right? Like they have these really cool curriculums and schedules, but then once you really get into there, it's like they're not doing any of that shit. They're not playing with foam after lunch. They're like trying to hoard all these kids into a room and they don't have time to do that. So,
Right.
it's interesting, and even working in academia, and some of the things that they have to say that they're doing, but once you get in there and they're like, "You're not doing this, like you just did that for the ranking." So it was kind of interesting. And I was like, "Well, yeah, actually I used it on 5 patients. One of them was having a panic attack. The other one, actually, 3 of them couldn't sleep and they didn't want to take medication. So I was like, let's try a blanket. They fell right asleep. And the other one was an admission that came in that had literally no clothes on because they were picked up off the streets and brought in to do an admission. And as you know, our temperature sits at like 65 and they were freezing and they couldn't even answer my questions. So yes, I handed out blankets. And she just sat there and she was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "Okay, well, we'll see you tomorrow night." It's just like mind
Yeah.
blown.
There's so many things with nursing that are just like mind-boggling, like that. It's like it's not like it's this expensive disposable resource. I mean, it's a blanket, wash it, and then you can use it
Right.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it was funny, and I think it was because it's like not a billable resource.
mhm, mhm.
Um and that really opened my eyes, and then that's when I was like, okay, I gotta start something. I've got to start training nurses on doing something else because this is like so crazy to me. And she came back, the 3 people that didn't want to take the medication, she's like, "Well, you didn't sit there and explain why they should take the medication." I was like, "No, because that's their choice that they don't want to take that. And I'm not going to force somebody to take a medication that doesn't make them feel good." And she was like, "Well, that's what the doctor wants." And I was like, "Yeah, but that's not what the patient wants. So that's
Mm.
our customer. Customer's always right." Like, let's go back to the McDonald's concept of the customer's always right, right? Um, so yeah, so that was really interesting. And working with nurse managers like that, it's like they also have limiting beliefs. So I have a somatic nurse coach that strictly just works with nurses.
Mhm.
And she's like, the transformation of some of these nurses is just mind-blowing, Emily, just because they have all these limiting beliefs that they can't do this or they can't do that. She's a nursing student right now. And her admissions rep said, "Hey, you cannot work while you're in nursing school." And she's like, "I have 3 kids. What do you mean I'm gonna have to feed my kids?" Like, and he's like, "Well, you're not going to succeed in nursing school." And I was just like, and here we go. And this is where the bullying starts, right? Um, and she's working with this nursing student. She's like, "Well, you can work. Like, you don't have to let them know every waking moment of what you're doing. Work, go to school. Like, that's what a lot of people do." And she's like, "I'm
Right.
pretty sure if you have 3 kids, you can probably handle nursing school and working." And she was like, "Yeah, actually, I just needed somebody to tell me that." And I was like,
Mhm.
so our subconscious is taking in things all the time and has so many limiting beliefs. So providing ourselves with um, saying good things like, when we wake up in the morning, "I am so grateful that I got to wake up today. I am so grateful that I am breathing without any strain right now. I am so grateful that I'm able to sit in a chair in my house, my warm house," right? So it's like always reframing throughout the day because those sneaky little thoughts will come in. As we know, we have a negative bias as humans, and we're always going to go to the worst case scenario. So if we can help ourselves understand, okay, that was just a thought. now I need to reframe it and say something different. And the more times we reframe that thought, the more times we say that thought, it's just gonna come normalized. And instead of going to, for example, when we have patients that are in overwhelm or having suicidal thoughts, those thoughts are there for a reason. It means your nervous system's shutting down. It doesn't mean that you need attention. It doesn't mean that you're going to hurt yourself. It just means that your nervous system is so dysregulated right now. The only thing you can think about is shutting down like a computer. When a computer gets so overwhelmed, it's like peace and it shuts down on us, right? Like, and there's nothing we can do about it. All we can do is push the power button again and hopefully it starts back up, right? If it's not bombarded with viruses and all these things. And so when we're working with people that are having these thoughts of overwhelm, we have to bring them back to baseline and say, okay, what kind of thoughts are you having? Well, I'm having a thought that I want to kill myself. Okay. All right. Well, let's work with that, right? What had brought you up to this point? Well, I am going through some really big life changes and I'm really freaking out about it and I don't know what to do and I just rather just not be here. Okay. But all those things are probably really manageable. They're just coming in like a hurricane. And if we can't pick and choose which ones we want to classify and triage, right? As nurses, we triage. We're going to triage these thoughts. And we're going to triage all those things that are currently happening. And we're going to kind of put them together and list them out from 1 to 10. And we're going to come up with an action plan. And they're like, oh, okay. Actually, I don't want to kill myself. I just needed help figuring out all these thoughts. Yeah. Right. But we don't do that in traditional therapy. We condone people that are having suicidal thoughts. As a recoverist of having chronic suicidal thoughts from the age of 13 to about the age of 31, I realized it was just on repeat. It was just like a repetitive thing I would say to myself. And I'm like, but that's not even serving me saying these things. Like, I don't really want to do that. It's because it was a circle and I needed something to just hack that circle down. And it wasn't until I learned about subconscious reprogramming that I was like, actually, I have a choice to not think that. Okay, let's reframe it. You know, I'm feeling so overwhelmed right now. I need to figure out a plan, right? And I would tell my parents, my significant other, like, hey, I am not suicidal. I used to say I would want to kill myself, but now I just understand that I'm just overwhelmed and my nervous system just wants to shut down and I really need some help, right? And it's not something to be scared of. And so the many clients, I think I've seen over like 320 clients now that have had chronic suicidal thoughts or have had plans or even attempts. And they're like, Emily, nobody in my lifetime, therapist, doctors, has explained it as simple as you just did. And I was like, yeah, because it's a system and our system is broken. And when somebody says that they want to end their own life, we throw them in a facility and we strip them of everything, including connection, support, and love. And we give them a gown and we put them in a cold room and we give them really shitty food. And we're like, get better.
Right. We'll keep you here for a couple days and then we'll throw you back out so that you can start over again.
Yeah. So you can keep
With no
going with that same
resources.
cycle, right? You know, and maybe we'll get you on a bunch of meds, and those meds potentially might even cause you to end your own life, but it's only going to be in a 4 to 6 week time frame. So just be really cautious of that. And it's like, what WTF? Like, what is happening here, right? And so I again would get talked to when I would hold groups in the mental health facilities. They were like, Emily, like, you're not following the guidelines of what this group is about. And we really need to talk about suicide and why it's bad. And I'm like, but no, it's not bad. Your nervous system is shutting down and you just need help with that. So that's where the subconscious piece comes in of rewiring your neural pathways. Because if for the longest time, if you're like something really hard happens in your life and the first thing you go to is like, I want to kill myself. Yeah, that's just because that's the answer you have been given to all of the circumstances up to this point, and that's like your easy way out. But you don't have the skills to manage those overwhelming thoughts. And so that's where somatic nurses are trained in dialectical behavior therapy. And towards the end of the course, there is a dialectical behavior therapy workbook that you can download. It's a workbook I wrote. It's basically, oh, here it is. So it's the dialectical behavior therapy workbook, and it has all of the things that you would see in DBT. There's a ton in here. And where I got it from was I took DBT myself I was an outpatient for 2.5 years, and it literally saved my life. And if these skills were taught in schools, that's why I want school nurses to be trained in somatic nurse coaching, because if they could teach these to kids, we probably wouldn't have kids acting out in class. We probably would have kids not fighting each other. We would probably have less kids in detention. And if they were in detention, let's have a somatic nurse, school nurse go in and teach them some skills. They're in there for a reason. Let's not just sit them there for an hour in silence. Like, that's not helping. So it's really starting a revolution of changing really how the system works and operates in regards to behavioralism. So Marsha Linehan, actually, this is the book I got it from. It's DBT skills training handouts and worksheets. It's a great reference to have. It's a huge book. I think there's, let's see, 410 pages. But these worksheets in here, I'll show you one. The worksheets are really just kind of clinical. So that's like a super clinically looking thing. It's kind of, it's hard to navigate. But Marsha Linehan did that for a reason, because she said, we want you to get frustrated while you're trying to look for the worksheet so you can emotionally regulate. And I was like, that's genius. And so that was her big thing. So I was like, hey, this is, I think, 84 pages, but
I think I've got it here.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, super, just really easy to read. You can use it as young as patients. I've had a patient about 6. That's the youngest I've done. I think I had another somatic nurse coach, had a client that was 5. And she was using some of the skills like HALT, which is like, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Which a 5-year-old can totally relate to.
Right.
And she was like, hey, are you any of these things right now? When you get really frustrated and you throw yourself on the ground or you're hitting your sister, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And so now he stops, and his mom put this on the wall in every room, and he goes and points to which one he is before he goes and hits his sister. And she's like, oh my God, you're hungry. Let's get you something to eat. And he'll be like, I'm lonely. And that's when he would start to hit his sister, because he wasn't getting attention.
Right.
And so his mom would be like, oh, you're feeling lonely. What's going on? And he'd be like, I just want to hug mommy. And it's like, oh my God. Right. And so she noticed, like, the mom reported that literally most of his behaviors had gone away. Like, yes, he still had tantrums, and he would throw himself sometimes on the floor of Target when he didn't get what he wanted. But when she got down to it and was able to get him to a safe space like the car, and they're kind of going home, and she would review like, hey, I noticed that, in Target, you did throw yourself on the ground, and it seemed like you were frustrated for some reason. Were you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And he's like, Mommy, I'm so tired. Right? So it's giving the kids the skills to effectively communicate like what's happening in their life. And adults need this too. And so as somatic nurse coaches, we really highly use this in our coaching sessions. And you can also have your clients purchase the book on Amazon. It's like $25, but then you as a somatic nurse coach can use the templates that I also provide, and you can use those as a computer. You can even send them to them if they need to print them out. So I want to make it very feasible of learning DBT. Because it changes lives. It seriously does. And if more nurses were trained in DBT, we would then be able to use that with patients. So it kind of goes back to the somatics of being in the present moment, being here now. So how does this coincide with subconscious? Again, we are what we think. And I highly suggest listening or reading to the book, You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He really goes into some greatness, and he's done lots of studies. He has tons of research of the one I just read was about genetics. Like genetics of diseases and disorders is only about 5%. So when we have clients that are like, oh, my mom was depressed.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Cool.
Right.
That's great. But
Yeah.
you don't have to be.
Right.
Right? Or my mom was obese. Cool.
Mhm.
But you don't have to be. Oh, my mom had diabetes. Cool, but you don't have to be. I was speaking with my stepmom the other day, and she's like, Emily, psychosis is genetic in our family. And I was like, cool, but it's 5%. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't run through families. It runs through
Right.
behavioral recognition of the previous generation, right? They're seeing that and they're like, oh, well, that's how I have to act. So then that's when psychosis happens. And usually we know in relation to taking somebody's history, like my dad had psychosis. Okay, so you might have a chance of having a psychotic episode because that's the behavior that you saw and you've normalized that into your subconscious of that's how you deal with hard experiences. You have a psychotic moment. We recently, I had a patient at CHOA, and she was having pseudo seizures every time somebody didn't address her by the right pronouns. Now, I had to have a good talk with her. I was like, look, yes, you have pronouns. That's great. That's what you identify with. But you are causing your nervous system to go into a seizure every time that somebody doesn't call you a they. And she's like, yeah, it just really affects me. Does it though? Is it? But you're causing that you're literally causing that seizure because you are identifying that doesn't make you feel good. So now you're like having a seizure about it. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, that's not necessary. We're going to calm your nervous system, and we're going to reroute your thinking that if somebody calls me the wrong pronoun, it's okay because they have no idea what my pronouns are. And so just reframing that with her, she was like, yeah, actually and she doesn't have seizures anymore. She's like, I'm not offended because they probably don't know that I want to be called they, and they keep calling me she. Good, great job. Let's move on with life, right? It's like some of these things are just so unnecessary, but the way our traditional medical system goes about it is absolutely irrational. Been talking too much today. And so, if we just have a talk with somebody about reframing their thought process with limiting beliefs, she had limiting beliefs that when somebody called her the wrong pronoun, that her body went into this seizure. And it was very interesting to watch it happen. And it was like, just with depression, yes, there's chronic depression. I've been chronically depressed, but until I knew that I had a choice, I no longer choose to be in that state because it doesn't feel good. And so in regard to that, it goes into our frequencies, and I'll upload this stuff as well, but frequencies are really important, and how we vibrate in life is really important. So can you see this emotional guidance scale? Okay. So as we can see right here, the lowest of the low is fear, grief, depression, powerless, and victim. And a lot of people live in this low vibrating state all day long. Yep.
All I'm able to see is from peace to desire.
Peace to desire. Let's see
Yep.
here. Peace to desire. I think I got the wrong. Let me see if you're on the other one.
I'm on the middle one. It says somatic nursing 2024.pdf.
All right. Can you see this one?
No.
No.
I still see the same thing.
All right, hold on. Stop share. Stop share. Here we go. Here we go. Technical difficulties. All right, here we go. Is that a spiral now?
There we go. That looks very different. Okay, yes.
All right, perfect.
That's a spiral.
All right. So this is the emotional guidance scale, and we can literally post this up in front of patients and be like, all right, where are you at? And they're going to be like, I'm so depressed. Okay, does that feel good? No. Okay, well, you're comfortable because you've been depressed for so long. And if you step outside of that comfort of depression, people may not pay attention to you. When we are at a well state, people don't really ask how we're doing because they know by looking at us that we are in a well state. And they're not going to be like, oh my God, what's wrong today? So we're not going to get that attention. We're not going to have to visit the doctor every 3 weeks and get the attention from the doctor.
Mhm.
And so really what it comes down to is that limiting belief that I'm just going to sit here in this comfortableness because it feels so comfortable and people pay attention to me because I'm so sad.
Mhm.
But it doesn't feel, it's not serving you. It's just
Right.
making you feel more shitty.
Mhm.
So we saw that in COVID. Fear was a huge emotion during COVID times and still kind of is with the things that are happening in the world. So
Mhm.
showing this to clients or even learning it ourselves, we can be like, okay, I don't want to be here. What can I look at over here and get on the upward spiral? Sweet hopefulness. What am I hopeful? That I am going to move into a new house. I'm hopeful to see my grandkids tomorrow. I'm hopeful that I get to eat a good meal in an hour, right? I have a positive expectation that I'm going to finish the certification and I'm so excited about it that I'm going to be doing what I want to do instead of working traditional nursing hours. I'm so passionate about providing the correct care to humans and the collective so people can actually get better instead of worse, right? And then we really get up to the top here, and that is your authentic self. When we are in this joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation, we are truly ourselves. And that might be symptoms of bipolar. If you're in a high state of bipolar, sometimes you are actually your authentic self. And society doesn't like that. So they're like, well, hold on, you're too energetic. Hold on, let's give you some medication. Hold on. And, what I've seen with symptoms of bipolar is energy management. When you're super high, let's manage that energy. When you're super low, let's maybe get you up to a higher energy. It's about energy management rather than like you're just high and low. It's understanding that when I'm super high, I have things that I can do, like I can clean my whole house. I can work on projects and I can get shit done, right? But if I'm in a lower bipolar state, I need to realize that. And then I need to do things on this upward spiral that are going to help me lift me up rather than be in this depression, powerless victim mode. Because I've been up here when I'm on my high. So I know I can get there again. So it's really interesting when we come into the subconscious and start reframing people's mindsets, things start to dissipate. People no longer have bipolar. They might have these highs and lows, but they're not as strong. Depression kind of fades away. You're no longer diagnosable for depression. Anxiety, when your nervous system is in a regulated state, you won't be so anxious that you're having panic attacks. You can manage, like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little anxiety. I'm going to manage it so it doesn't get way up here, right? So it's like the preventative. So somatic nurse coaches are like the preventative by teaching the nervous system regulation skills. So I'll put this in here too, but it's just really good. It understands your frequency. When we're vibrating at a higher frequency, we're energetic beings. Our mitochondria is like, ah, it's the powerhouse of the cell. When that is vibrating so high, you start bringing in things. Like you said, Jenny, your house just came into you and you're like, yes, this is it, right? Because you were at a high vibrating frequency and things just start coming in, good things. When we're at a low vibrating frequency, bad stuff just keeps happening to us. We're like, why is this happening to me? I don't know, because you're probably asking for it, right? I know I don't want to get in an accident. Okay, be wary of your words because you
Right.
might get into some sort of accident. You might bang into something. You might crash your car. You might hurt, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like,
Right.
it's,
And that's one of the things, that stuck with me years ago was I heard, like your subconscious doesn't understand like negatives, so when you say I don't want to, or I don't, then it just hears the accident part and
yeah.
not, I don't want to be sick, it hears the sick part. So
Yes, yes, it's all connected. So, and that's just something we do not teach in nursing school. We do not teach in patient care. Doctors do not learn these things. Even psychologists do, they go through 8, 10 years of schooling and they still don't understand the subconscious or
Mhm.
rewiring it.
Mhm.
So those are definitely things we need to focus on doing for ourselves first. And there's tons of affirmations on repeat that you can play. I highly suggest diving in. I'll put in our Facebook community actually a couple of recordings that you can play while you sleep. And some of them, depending on what you want to manifest, whether it's abundance, money, relationships, love, whatever, there's specific things that are said while you sleep, and you just play it on repeat. And
Mhm.
while you're sleeping, it's like, you are enough, you are safe, you are connected. And what can sometimes happen when we start to reconnect new neural pathways, or realign new neural pathways, people have nightmares. That's like one of the side effects of starting to rewire your nervous system,
Mhm.
because you're basically noticing all your fears
Mhm.
are coming up. And it's basically like the detour, and you're really kind of at that fork in the road, and fear is coming at you. You might have nightmares of like somebody cheating on you, or somebody breaking into your home, or somebody dying, or somebody getting injured. And those are just fears that are being released because we are rerouting and going a different direction. But those things are going to still
Oh,
come in because that's what you've programmed into your subconscious. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Uh-huh, it does.
Yeah. So just to be aware, I like to talk side effects, not of medications, but of actual things that happen in our body.
Right, right.
Um, People sometimes show those kind of side effects. I know when I was rerouting my own nervous system and neural pathways, I had so many nightmares. And I would start to be like, try to figure out why I was having those nightmares. And finally, the coach that I was working with, she's like, no, you're just actually rerouting. And that's just a side effect. And soon enough, you won't have those nightmares anymore. Once you kind of process that through your mind and your subconscious, and you've started to go the other path, you will start to have actually good dreams. So it's kind of all in the process. It's like taking a medication, kind of have some horrible side effects, the same
Mhm.
as neural
Right.
rerouting as well.
Okay. Yeah, good to know.
Yeah, so that might be something that clients say, like, I'm having this nightmare, I don't know
Mhm.
why. Yeah, there's a reason for it. It's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that being said, is there any questions that you have on the material that I just presented?
I don't think so. That was lots of good stuff. Some of it that was a good refresher, some of it that was brand new. So very cool. Thank you. I listened to something by Dr. Joe Dispenza years ago, that How to Break the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yes.
But yes, I wrote that one down too. The You Are the Placebo. And what was the name of the documentary about serial killers? Do
Let
you
me
know?
look it up.
Okay.
It's on, let's see, it's on HBO Max, I think. Serial killer. I think it's called like You Are Crazy. Wait, hold on. Oh, it's called Crazy Not Insane.
Okay.
And I believe it's on HBO Max, maybe.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's You Are Crazy, Not Insane. And it's Dorothy Audenow. It's basically her documentary of interviewing like tons of people that committed murders, were serial killers, and she interviewed them, and she basically was going to on the stand, um, kind of for these people, saying, they did this because they had so much trauma in their childhood.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the defense was like, no, that's crazy. And so it really relates back to like multiple personality disorder is what a lot of these people present as, also known as multiples.
Mhm.
And they actually black out and they don't even remember doing the deed.
Right.
It's really unfortunate. And instead of getting put into a mental facility where they can possibly get help with that, they get put into a jail. Um,
Right.
and so she was really in the forefront, in the early forefront, like in the 90s of when this kind of all came down, where they were starting to use like neurologists on the stand to say like, hey, like, let's look at this brain scan. And you can see that there are discrepancies within their brain
Mhm.
that are causing them to do these things. And they
Mhm.
have no recollection.
Wow.
Um, So yeah, it's a very fascinating documentary. If you're into that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's really about the neuroscience in the brain and how our ACEs from our childhood can really extremely affect us as adults. And it's not really taken into much consideration in the modern day treatment of all these things that we have going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and even ACEs can go back to people currently having GERD, or even some of these stomach things that people have that really can go back to your childhood. And it's kind of just coming up in the forefront right now. And instead of being put on a bunch of medications, which are fine, medications can get you stable and make you feel
Right.
better so you can do the work, but we don't want you to be on that for the rest of life. You shouldn't be taking an antidepressant for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's now you're a customer. You're not getting better. So yeah, so it's really interesting how some people don't relate that to their current physical ailments, diseases, or disorders. A lot of time they're just like, well, what's wrong with me? I need this fixed. And it's like, well, hold on, we got to deal with some of this neurological stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where somatic nurse coaches come in to play. So yeah. So yeah,
Very
check that
cool.
out.
Yeah. Well,
Definitely.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful. I think my husband has supper done, so
All right. Awesome. All
yeah.
right, great. Well, thanks for coming in, Jenny. And again, I'll put
Thank you
this
so much.
recording up and the information so you have it.
Yep. And you're putting the things, are those going in Facebook or in the thing or in an email or I'm not sure where things go, right?
Yeah, so I'll put them on System IO. They'll be way at the bottom below bonus content. I'm gonna go ahead and create an area there, and it will just say the date today, and then I'll attach those documentation to that as files, so you have those files as well.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Emily. Nice to meet
You're
you.
welcome. Yes, yes. Have a good night, okay?
You too.
All right,
Bye.
bye.